He is a mycologist and I guess a philosophy specialist. And I've never met anyone that's so dedicated to the study of magic mushrooms. That seems like a pretty cool thing. He's a long-term member of EGA, and also runs his own mycological business, which is
Guerrilla Mycology.
Guerrilla Mycology. I'll hand the stage over to Caine for what is one of his 4 contributions, I believe. 3 or 4?
4.
He is the most popular Caine Barlow.
Oh dear. Hi everyone. Okay, so we're going to talk about mushroom cultivation. But I have lots of favourite topics, but mushroom cultivation is really where it's at for me. And I think probably more so is actually getting other people to grow mushrooms. And, I'm very much into the empowerment of everybody to grow their own mushrooms for food, medicine, and you can take medicine however you like that. Yes. So today I'm going to introduce probably a couple of little techniques. Who here has grown mushrooms? Okay. Another hand up there. Yep, cool, excellent. You were successful?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Not in psilocybin, but...
No, not going to get you to admit to anything here. Oyster mushrooms is...
Yeah, oysters, yeah. My biggest one cluster was 946 grams.
Oh, nice work.
Yeah, I was having lots of fun.
Yeah, well... Okay, not me. Yeah. Am I still okay? This is actually very uncomfortable. Up the back, how did you go with your mushroom cultivation?
The kit was fine, but I tried to make all my cellular. I never ended up well.
Okay. And who else? How was yours?
Yeah,
Good. Yeah.
I did get some contamination in my fungi.
Yeah, see that's usually what happens. A lot of people try to have a go at growing mushrooms and it just goes bad. And then they don't try again. There's nothing wrong with growing a nice healthy batch of mold. You've done it. You've actually grown mycelium. You've grown fungi. And it has successfully fruited. Congratulations. But yes, it's not the fungi that you were after. So hopefully from today's workshop, I can share a few little techniques to help you then go ahead, grow your own food or medicine. Or even just for kicks. Like as in just growing mushrooms, just because it's fun. It is fun. Growing mushrooms is fun.
If you hate the microphone, I will hold the mic for you.
I'm just going to take this off for a moment. Oh no.
I can hold one for you if you want.
Okay. No, it's good. I'll deal with it. Okay. I think in previous years, who's been to one of my workshops before? Yo. Anyone else? No? Okay. Last year's, I think, was a little complicated, and it was a little bit kind of off topic, and I thought, well, okay, we're at MardiGrass. The topic here is, a little bit more interesting mushrooms. So I thought this time around, I'm going to gear the workshop towards those techniques that people use to grow their more interesting mushrooms. But at the same time, you can use these techniques for just normal household mushrooms. So like I said, I'm very much into empowering people to grow their own mushrooms. But one of the things about cultivation of fungi is having an understanding of the life cycle of mushrooms, but also there's a whole new language around fungi that can be a little confronting for people, and a few new practices that can also be a little confronting. There's a big thing about being clean, spraying down your surfaces with alcohol, being tidy, and trying to do things methodically in a way that does not then result in causing contamination. I'm kind of doing things a little guerrilla style today. I'm not using any alcohol here, and I'd just like to remind you that if you're doing this at home, please do spray down the surface of your table and the things that you're working with alcohol, because it will limit contamination. Come on in.
Sorry.
All good.
No, it's just sore.
Okay. One of the favourite methods I like to demonstrate is and this is it's applicable to oyster mushrooms or wood-loving fungi. Those of you who are from the southern states might find this helpful with certain wood-loving fungi. Yes. But essentially fungi are decomposers. Their role in the environment is to break down organic matter that has been left behind by plants, by lignicolous organisms. So typically like wood, or in some cases, yes, secondary decomposers that will like land in cow dung, for example, horse dung, and will grow in those environments. So in order to grow fungi, we need to then grow them on a substrate. Now the substrate is another term for their food. It's one of these technical terms that we use. But yeah, all I mean by substrate is it's the food that they eat. Now fungi have a weird lifestyle in which they grow through their food. You know, like we as humans or animals, we get our food, we masticate it, we swallow it, and it's digested within us. Fungi have these long filamentous threads that they push through their substrate, their food, and as they do it, they're exuding these enzymes. Fungi are little chemical factories, and they have this whole suite of enzymes that they can use to try to break down different types of organic matter. So as they're pushing through, they're exuding all these kind of acidic enzymes that are then breaking down the food around them. And this can be anything from like semi-decomposed grass matter through to really complex lignin structures within wood. Wood is a very, very complex chemical structure. These really long chain, multi kind of organic compounds with really tough to break chemical bonds. But fungi have worked out a way to do it. They can push through with their mycelium, and they can decompose these complex compounds and derive nutrients from them. But we can use kind of other organic matter. So cardboard, for example, is derived from wood chips. So it's low nutrient. You don't get a lot of other organisms that will grow on it. So you've got a pretty good chance of growing some fungi on cardboard. But we come back to this thing about being clean with the substrates that we're working with. So I'm also going to introduce the term pasteurization. So pasteurization is a way of treating your substrate, of the food for the fungi, in a way that then eliminates any of the potential competition. So mold or other fungi that may be present that want to use that same substrate. Typically we will pasteurize their food using heat. So in the case of cardboard, you could just boil this in hot water for 10 minutes, and that will be enough to pasteurize this enough to be able to then work with it. If you wanted to use wood chips, you would probably pasteurize your wood chips in water that's between 60 to 80 degrees and let it sit in that water for about an hour. And that should be enough to then kill off any of the other organisms within those wood chips. But there's also thermophilic organisms that will survive and will act in a protective way to help the mycelium to then myceliate, to colonize and grow through those wood chips. So there's a few little tricks like that that we can use to help our fungi along, to help them to colonize their substrate and make the most of the environment that we're giving them, that we're trying to use to be able to grow them. So ordinarily I would probably boil this cardboard for 10 minutes, but not today. I'm just going to douse. I mean, this is not going to work, but I'm asking you to just kind of imagine that, yes, I've boiled this, and you know, and these are the tips that you should, the technique you should use at home. Can I moisten this somewhere?
Yes, you may moisten it, yes. Moisture everywhere.
I'm just going to go off stage a little. And just give me a minute.
By the way, we are recording, but we may put elements of this on YouTube.
Okay, right, sorry, I had to get into my plastic containers. Okay, so this is just like a little plastic cardboard technique that I like to demonstrate to people. If you've never grown mushrooms before, this is super easy, and it allows you to grow the mycelium, to allow it to grow through some cardboard, and you can open the container, lift the cardboard up, you can observe it growing, you can smell it, you can pull it apart if you want, and really kind of get to know it, to not become one with the mycelium, but you know, like you at least kind of like really get to observe it growing and doing its thing. Right, so where was I with my role-playing game? So I boiled some cardboard for about 10 minutes. I've squeezed all the water out and let it cool down, and then I can just layer it up like this. Now, I couldn't get any oyster mushrooms, so I'm just going to use this, but you need to use oyster mushrooms in this case. This is a non-oyster mushroom, it's an agaricus mushroom. Agaricus won't work in this situation because agaricus is also a secondary decomposer. So in that sense, Psilocybe cubensis won't also work in this situation, but this is good for other wood-loving psilocybes. Oh, are we recording this? Okay, whoops.
I can edit whatever you want.
Okay, well,
I'll get your permission.
right, yes. So you would use the stem part of the oyster mushroom, but you know king oysters? Those big king oysters, they're all stem, tiny little bit of cap. They're perfect for doing this. But you essentially just break up the stem and you just kind of layer it through the cardboard. If you had like stem butts from a wood-loving mushroom, you could probably do the same thing. You just lay your stem butts out on the cardboard, and then you... No. We'll get there in a minute. Keep layering. Also wood chips. You know, if you know like a patch of wood-loving fungi and you know they grow there and You know, that's the mycelium. You can get some of those wood chips and do the same thing. And then keep layering. And then probably just add a little bit more on the top. Place the lid on top and let that sit for about 2 weeks, and you'll get, within 2 weeks, you'll see mycelium growing through that cardboard.
Is that in the fridge or just anywhere?
Just anywhere. Just anywhere. I usually leave it on top of the fridge where it's nice and warm. Fungi are essentially really closely associated to animals, so they like the things that we like. We like a warm room, it's not too wet, but with just enough moisture and enough food to be able to do their thing. You know, slowly create food and spread and grow and do their thing. At a certain point, the cardboard will become fully colonized, fully myceliated, at which point you can then just like crack open the lid, and then within probably another week or 2 weeks you'll have mushrooms growing out the side of your container. So, that's for oyster mushrooms. If you're growing some of the other interesting wood-loving fungi, that gets a little bit more complicated, and you then need to create a little bit more substrate so like you could just get wood chips and pasteurize some wood chips and transfer this into your pasteurized wood chips, and it should grow from there. So that's the cardboard technique. But this is northern New South Wales. Your fungi up here are a little bit different, and I thought, okay, it's time to. Thank you. So mushroom cultivation it's still a it's still a kind of a recent science, you know, like it really wasn't till like the 70s that people really started to work out techniques and methods to be able to cultivate mushrooms, and particularly certain mushrooms. So I think like Dennis and Terence McKenna released their book in the 70s, and they use rye grain, and they inject spores into their rye grain and allow that to then germinate, grow, and then they case those rye grains and allow the mushrooms to fruit from that. It requires a little bit of a technique, you know, like having a glove box and a really sterile space to be able to do that. But then going into the 80s, people were experimenting with different things. And by the end of the 1980s, you had, his name was Professor Psilocybe fanaticus, came up with a technique called the PF tech. PF standing for Psilocybe fanaticus. And he advertised his kit in the back of High Times magazines during the late 80s into the early 90s, and it became a really popular method, not just for growing cubensis, but also growing for other mushrooms as well. So you can grow oyster mushrooms using the PF tech, urishi, turkey tail. You can even do shiitake, lion's mane. I recently saw a photo of someone doing cordyceps, growing cordyceps using the PF tech. So it's really quite an adaptable method. You can muck around with the recipe somewhat and really experiment with this. It's really easy. Have I missed anything? Any questions at this point? No? Oh.
When do you decide to take the lid off?
Oh, when you see it fully myceliated. So like the whole thing will just become covered in mycelium and white. And you know at that point to open the...
Actually mushrooms.
Yes. Just the mycelium, yeah. But that's a general rule, and it's the same case with this case with the PF tech. Yeah. Once all that's gone completely white, you can then, you know, grow mushrooms off it. So the PF tech is based around brown rice flour and vermiculite. So brown rice flour you can get from any kind of, I think you can even get in Woolworths. Certain Woolworths you can find it, but usually any organic whole food store will have brown rice flour. But if you're really stuck, you can just buy brown rice and you can grind it up into a flour using a coffee grinder, an electric coffee grinder. Vermiculite you can get from any gardening store. You can get it even, I think, in some, in most hardware stores and even in some supermarkets like IGAs or Woolies. Some will have it, particularly in rural areas where people, do a bit of gardening and they want access to this stuff. Some of them carry it for you. But you also need either liquid culture. Now, where did that go? You can get online, or you can call a mate, or find out a way to source it. You can get liquid culture. There's a few companies that do like shiitake, oyster mushrooms, reishi, liquid cultures, so Aussie Mushroom Supplies, Root Lab. I'm not sure, I think Little Acre in Brisbane might even start doing liquid cultures for edibles. And they will ship it to you in a syringe. It's usually capped, and you just, like in a really clean space, just remove the cap and then put on the needle that they will send with you. They send it to you in a nice little kit form. They'll send you the syringe and they'll send a few needles. The other option is to try to get a spore syringe. They're a little bit more challenging to get and probably actually the kind of thing that's easier to source yourself. So you might want to do a little bit of foraging, out in some cow fields, for example, particularly earlier on in the season, or picking really fresh young specimens, preferably even before the veil has broken off. You pick it and then take off the veil, and then you can make your own spore print, at which point people are going to go, well, what's a spore print? I don't know if you'll be able to see this from the back. But that's essentially a spore print on foil. I've just taken the cap of the mushroom, placed it down on the foil, mushroom cap. Oh, no, wrong bag. Mushroom cap. Remove the stem. You place it on the foil like so. You cover it with a cup or a bowl, leave it for 12 hours, and then take the bowl off, take the cap, and there should be a nice big dark spore print. And that should be enough for you to work with to make a spore syringe.
To make that spore syringe, we'll go through that minute.
I'm doing that right now.
I've got this far many a time.
Right, okay. I guess then there's another supply thing is syringes, so Luolock syringes. I might actually, hang on, I'll see how many I've got. I need to keep at least one for me. Well, medical supply stores. Yeah, you can get them on eBay, but you'll get them cheaper and in bulk from medical supply stores. And they're fine for you to walk into. Like I know there's a really good one at Tweed Heads that, you just walk in and go, I need a box of Luolock syringes, 10 cc's, and they'll be like, yep, sure, no problem, hand you a box. No questions. Yeah, but I'm going to pass them around with, do you mind someone? And someone from over here? Or no, yeah, that would be great, thank you. Pass those around.
You want to see them around? Oh, it's the big guy.
But yeah, you're going to need a syringe to be able to do this, and you're going to need needles to do this as well.
No, share it around.
I just pass it around. If you can just pass it on. No, sorry. I didn't bring that many. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to do that now.
I presume you can buy sterile water from the medical supply stores too?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can get those little ampoules of sterile water or saline water, but yeah, in this case you want the sterile water. Or you can boil your own water, and that should do a fairly good job of cleaning it up. It won't be 100%, but it's okay. You boil it and then let it cool down. In this case, I'm just going to use this water. So just draw up some water into your syringe. You don't need a huge amount. Now, I'd probably do this. See, this is the thing. It does get a little tricky with... You can probably, if you're really clean about this, you could do this out in the open air. The thing with fungi is that there does tend to be kind of other things around, a little bit of dust on the spores, or, you know, occasionally a little bit of bacteria or other fungi that are sporing at the same time on the mushroom. So your spore print is not going to be 100% clean unless you've done it. You've grown the mushroom in a completely sterile environment, and you're then making the spore print and then the spore syringe equally in a completely sterile environment. I'll kind of hint towards a way that you can do this in a cleaner space. But the idea is essentially just squirt some water onto the spore print, and then if you rub it with the tip of the needle, you'll displace a whole heap of the spores. Is this what you did?
No, when I got to this part, I've always gone off on other things.
Oh, right, okay.
Sailed away to another adventure.
Fair enough. You don't need a lot of spores either. You don't need to... But if I just draw that up... you probably can't see it up the back, but you can see it. There's all these spores that are now suspended in that water. You know, that's probably a few hundred spores in there, and that's really all you need. And then I'm just going to top it up with a little bit of extra water, just so you actually got something to work with. That's essentially how you make a spore syringe. So essentially you just squirt your water on, use the tip of the needle to displace the spores from the foil, and then very gently draw it up again, like so. When I finish, you can come up and have a look. You can have a look at the syringe and a couple of other things I'll have here. So you end up with spore syringe or a liquid culture. The next thing is to then go ahead with your PF tech.
How long would the spore syringe last?
I'd probably give it a few months to a year. You probably don't want to keep it too much longer than that.
In a fridge or
in a fridge?
In a fridge.
Yeah.
And with the spore prints?
With the spore print, keep it cool. I usually keep them in a book, somewhere in a nice cool spot. You can keep them in the fridge if you want, but if you leave them out somewhere where they're constantly getting exposed to sunlight or warmth, that will degrade the spore print. So,
How long will they last in a print?
I've never had a print last beyond 10 years.
About 10 years? Wow.
Yeah, no, like after 10 years, they just, yeah.
2 or 3, no worries.
2 or 3 is fine.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Can you use a sterile dish instead of the foil?
Sterile.
Sterile dish?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. No, it doesn't have to be foil. It's just that the foil is easier to store. That's all. But if you just want to do it onto like a really clean plate and then just suck up all the spores from the plate, that's fine. Yep. Not a problem at all. Some people use glass. Like they'll use like those microscopy glass plates.
Spores, can they be also put inside a freezer? It would make a lot of different ones of the spore.
I wouldn't put them in the freezer. No. Yeah, no. I mean they're just the ice is just going to break down the cellular structure of the spores. Yeah. You could possibly store mycelium in a really low temperature fridge kind of environment for a little while, but you know, like mycelium gets frozen out in the environment. You know, it'll get hit by snow and it does come back okay. This is actually the same with dry wood chips. I've been experimenting with dry wood chips, and even when they've been dry for like a couple of months, if you get them wet and just let them sit on cardboard, after a while the mycelium will just come back to life. It's amazing. It's just you'll see it just reaching out of the wood chips and then spread across the cardboard.
That's really good for the subs.
Yeah. So you know, like if you don't get to your patch in winter, you can head off in the middle of summer and you can kind of, it should be fine.
Will I be able to, in a good environment here, could I grow subs up here?
Yep.
Yeah?
You know they grow up here.
I can actually. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean,
They grow up through northern New South Wales into southeast Queensland. My colleague Alistair McTaggart was collecting them from the bunya forests
wow, okay.
up in the bunya ranges. Psilocybe suberugosa.
Hey, wait.
What's the English name?
Subs.
They're just called subs. There's no common name, sorry. I mean, in Victoria, we call them gold tops, so, you know, like there's this constant argument between Victorians and Queenslanders about gold tops. It's just like, well, my gold tops are better than yours.
Caine, just a quick question. I've had spore prints and I've vacuumed and sealed them. Is that better?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just how, you know.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. Yeah. Okay. For those of you that are kind of note orientated, where's my other? There it is. The PF Tech recipe is 2 parts vermiculite to 1 part brown rice flour to 1 part water. So you can use 2 cups of vermiculite to 1 cup of brown rice flour to 1 cup of water. And I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm probably going to just halve it just because I'm only working with really a couple of jars. So otherwise I'm just chucking stuff out. And I'm totally estimating this, which is totally on brand with my whole guerrilla mycology thing. So that's about half a cup of brown rice flour. That also just, if I do it like that, it makes it easier for then when it comes to the vermiculite. I mean, you might also probably want to wear gloves when you're doing this. Wear gloves, maybe have a bit of alcohol on your gloves beforehand just to clean them. Vermiculite, you might want to just kind of mix it up a little bit.
A good tip with your vermiculite is to get a watering jug, like a water can for your garden, and water it before you open it up and move it because it's really, really dusty.
I probably, sorry,
Would it?
I gently missed it.
Gently missed, yeah. But the
I would gently, probably wear a mask as well. Yeah, but gently mist it because that will then dampen any of the dust that comes up off it. But you want to be careful with the recipe. Like, you don't want too much water. Okay, so that's kind of reasonably well mixed up. There. Oh, now I'm going to have dust all over me. But anyway. Right, and then half a cup of water. Add most of it, but don't add all of it. Okay, I need to add a little bit more. And that's okay. If I squeeze that, there's no water coming out of that. So that's going to be fine. So just so you can kind of see it. So there's moisture through that. It's clumping a little bit, but it's not like really soggy or sopping wet. You don't want that. Too much water encourages bacteria and other things.
Is the vermiculite already pasteurised?
Yes, it is. Yeah, but we're still going to have to pasteurize this. So the next part of the PF Tech, hello, is, I've lost my jar. There it is. So fill your jar probably to about 3/4. 3/4 to maybe, what's that, 7, take some of that out. Don't push it down. Mycelium needs space to be able to grow through. Like, mycelium loves to run through air spaces, so don't damp it down, just kind of let it just sit there naturally. And then the last step is to then add a layer of vermiculite and pat it down like that. Now, the vermiculite, in this case, then behaves kind of like a filter. Nothing can grow on vermiculite. There is no nutrient value to it whatsoever. So anything that kind of gets in there and onto that vermiculite is not going to grow. It's not going to germinate. It's just going to have a go at the vermiculite and just go, nah, there is nothing here for me. And it won't spread down through into that layer of vermiculite and flour that you're then growing your mycelium on. There's all kinds of new fandangled lids that you can get, and I'll show you some of those in a minute. But the original technique was pretty much either you just had your metal lid for the jar that you're working with, and you either bang some holes through it to be able to then inject the liquid culture into, or the spore syringe through. But you can also just use foil. If I can actually get it open. So you just kind of have like a foil square like that, just enough to fold over, the jar like that. And then you're going to want another one, and you'll see why shortly. And make this one a little bit bigger than the last one, so it can sit over fully like that. Okay, now the next step that I can't demonstrate here for you, unfortunately, is you can either then sterilize this in a pressure cooker. So make a bunch of these at the same time. You know, like make maybe 4 or 8, depending on the size of your pressure cooker. Do them all at the same time. So in a pressure cooker, you want to do this probably sterilize for about an hour, and that should be fine. But you can also do steam sterilization. So if you have like I know like with some pots you can get like a little plate that will sit up off the bottom of your pot. If you can get one of those and then just sit it in the saucepan with the water sitting up about halfway up the jar, and then just kind of let it sit there within that while the water's boiling away for about 90 minutes to 2 hours. That should be enough to steam sterilize these.
Okay. In a pressure cooker, are you also filling the water halfway up the glass?
Well, you just follow the normal pressure cooker instructions, like it's usually like a finger's depth, or it's just that in a saucepan that water's going to boil off really quick. So you want something to lift the jars up off the base of that saucepan, or pot, one of those big kind of cooking pots. Yes, I know people have used ovens, but you're going to then lose all the moisture that's within the PF Tech. And so that's the thing, you need to really steam sterilize it. That maintains the moisture level in there. Because if you lose too much of that, it's too dry and the mycelium won't fully myceliate through it. But yeah, you can steam pasteurize it for about 2 hours, and that should be enough.
But microwave. What does the microwave do to essentially sterilize?
You know, that could probably actually work. that could certainly work. You wouldn't have the foil in there in that case. But you could probably use cling wrap in that situation. Again, this comes back to be creative. I think a big part of this is just you can be creative. Be as creative as you like. Yeah, if you want to use cling wrap in a microwave, give it a go. I'm going to try that. Thank you. So once you've done that, once you've steam pasteurized it or pressure cooked it, let them cool down, take them out, let them sit and cool down.
The problem with the microwave is you can't do it for an hour.
No, you don't need to. You only do it for like 10 or 20 minutes. Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. I never thought about that.
Maybe sterilize sponges from the kitchen sink in there.
Yeah.
Just to kill that.
Yeah, well. No, that's a great idea. Thank you. Okay, so where was I? And then essentially, once you've done that, you're then ready to inoculate your PF Tech. So gently remove that top layer of foil. You know, you don't want to disturb this other layer. If you really want to, you can tape this other layer down with some tape. Shake up your liquid culture. Make sure you distribute the liquid culture throughout the syringe. And then the great thing with the foil is you can essentially just punch straight through it, line it up with the glass, and inject in maybe like 1 cc or 2 per hole. Spin it about a quarter, line it up with the glass, 1, 2 cc's. Or if you've got your spore syringe, the same kind of idea. Punch through the foil and inject like 1 or 2. Spin it around a little bit more and inject your spores like so. And then put that back. Put that back, and then put that somewhere where it's nice and warm, top of your fridge again. Wait a couple of weeks, and that should then be fully myceliated within about probably 2 to 4 weeks, depending on your temperatures and depending on the health of the liquid culture or the spore syringe. At some point, yes, that's going to be fully myceliated. You won't be able to see the substrate that was there because it's just all mycelium that's then growing all over that. Unfortunately, I don't have a proper example. And this kind of got disturbed during travel, so you can't really see the mycelium in there, but it's there. Once it's fully myceliated, you can then tap that out and grow your cake. So this is where you're going to need a fruiting environment. These things, these plastic containers, are perfect. Buy one of these, get a bag of there's a substrate, there's stuff called perlite that you can get. It's kind of like a little white rock, it's like pumice. You can get it from your hardware store, and you just buy a bag of it, pour the bag into the bottom, get it wet. Now the thing with the perlite is it soaks up water like a sponge, and then the water will evaporate off that and create a really lovely humid environment within the plastic container. And then what you're going to do, and I hope this works.
So sorry, you're putting perlite into that plastic container.
Yeah.
And then are you moisturising it?
Yeah, you pour in some water. You pour in just enough water just to moisten the perlite.
Just like you did before.
Yeah. You could possibly use vermiculite as well, because vermiculite kind of has similar properties. But the beautiful thing with perlite is you can heat treat it later on, like because algae will grow on it, or you'll get mycelium growing on it even. Whereas vermiculite is just no, it just turns yucky. So. No, I'm going to kind of demonstrate how to do it outside the container. More foil. You essentially just like have like a little plate like that, and hopefully this works. But you should be able to tip it up, your jar up, and tap it, and it should come out. Nope. And it's broken up. But it should come out cleanly as a cake. Let's try this again. No, I'm just destroying the whole thing. Like I said, it should come out cleanly. Things never work when you want. But
Is any mycelium dominated in there? Just a little bit?
yeah. I don't know, here I'll pass them around.
When it's fully pollinated, that'll be like what, a
White.
white hard brick.
Purely white. Yep. Just take that and... Oh, it's oyster mushrooms. Feel free to pass it around. Anyway, I mean, this was a little bit of an experiment, and it kind of got disturbed during travelling up here, and it's not as white as it should be. But that should tip out as a nice little cake, nice little block, solid block. And then what you do is you just sit that in your fruiting chamber with your perlite and keep the lid on, and within a week to 2 weeks you should see pins forming, and you should definitely have mushrooms within 4 weeks.
So is there no other food in there other than that rice bran, and that'll go perlite?
Yeah. So you just sit that foil on top of the perlite. The perlite is just creating humidity. It's not food. The food is just that block.
So they'll only actually fruit off the block?
Yes.
Okay.
They'll only fruit off the block.
Yep.
And then after maybe 2 or 3 flushes, just get rid of the block and then start over again. But this is pretty much it's not though, it's not the easiest method. The easiest method is actually the Uncle Ben tech. Now, supermarkets have done you a massive favour. They sell you little packets of fully sterilised rice. And all you need to do is either get your liquid culture or your spores, and you can inject them straight into the bag, seal it up, and within about probably 2 weeks, 4 weeks, it'll be fully myceliated, and you don't have to do any of this.
Sorry, so just to recap, because I missed it, I was walking around. Another tip is just to inject it straight into that.
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm going to pass around this packet. Mate, do you want to help?
And is that the pre-cooked rice, is it?
Look in the bottom. Now, I love this.
Is that pre-cooked?
Yeah, it's all pre-cooked rice. It's sterilised rice in here. If you look in the bottom, they even give you a clear bottom that you can kind of inspect your rice. It makes me wonder, it's like, did some person somewhere work this out of like, this is the perfect way to grow my mushrooms, and I'm going to give them all a clear layer on the bottom so that they can check how well it's myceliated.
Are you injecting it into the
Yeah.
base?
Oh no, I injected it into the top. This one that's going around. So this one going around is Cordyceps militaris, and you can see in the bottom, it's got that yellow colour that comes out of the militaris.
How big a hole are you cutting the top?
No, you're not cutting into the top. You're just
When it's fully colonised,
okay. You can either cut the top off completely, and you can either fruit straight out of the bag if you want, or now I'm going to have to empty this. Actually, I'll empty it into there.
How much did you inject inside?
About 1 mil, 2 mil. Yep. Not a lot. It doesn't need to be a lot. So this is essentially like a monotub. It's a plastic container. This has probably got more holes than you probably would have normally. That's because I use these inside the same kind of fruiting chamber, and it just maintains the humidity. You have the holes in order to be able for carbon dioxide to come out, but also for air to flow in, because mushrooms still need air exchange. essentially kind of animals. Like they're really closely related to animals, so they need air. So rather than tipping it out, for example, onto your piece of foil and then growing it from the cake, you could then potentially just break it up, tip it all into the bottom of your container here. You would cover these holes with micropore tape. I don't know if any of you use micropore tape, but this is what micropore tape looks like. I'll see if I can find the...
So you're not contaminating anything, is that right?
No. But the micropore tape helps stop things from getting in, you know, because this is going to be sitting around for a little while.
And same with your cooked rice, you're still going to pour it out.
Yeah. Shit. Excuse my French. Sorry, I can't find the edge. Ah, that it? No. Sorry about this.
I'll find it for you.
Hang on. I'll hack it. Okay, almost there. I have. Have you? Good. How's that bag going? Has it gotten around yet?
I'll get it. I'll come.
No, I don't need it back. You can keep passing it around if people want to look at it. Right, okay, we've got it. Pharmacists. This micropore tape you find in pharmacists. It comes in either white or brown, depending on your fashion choices. And essentially all you need to do is just seal those holes with the micropore tape, like so. I'm not going to do it for every hole, you get the idea, I'm sure.
And I suppose the tape does let carbon dioxide through it from people.
Yeah, no, the air will move through these fine. Yeah. You can also use Tyvek if you have access to Tyvek. And then just tip it all out into the bottom. But this is kind of where you can then take this to another level too, in terms of, you know, you've got that, but you can do something called bulking it out, which is then taking more substrate. So you could potentially get some straw, for example, cut it up really, really fine and pasteurize it and then mix it through that rice. You could also use compost. Go to your hardware, get one of those little packets of compost or manure, that manure stuff, and pasteurize that as well, and then mix it through this as like 1-to-1. You mix that PF Tech rice with a bit of straw, a bit of manure, and that will give you a much, much bigger yield of mushrooms. And that's pretty much it. I'm up for questions at this point.
With your pasteurisation, have you ever heard of or used Bricky's line? Because I've actually pasteurised whole males of hay and...
That's my main method. My main method at home is using hydrated lime, which is Bricky's lime.
Bricky's line,
Sorry, we can't.
you use your Bricky's line, you tip like...
You can buy like a massive bag of it for like $10, and then you use about half a cup of the lime to 50 litres of water, and then you soak your substrate in that overnight. The problem with that is that it alkalines the substrate a lot. Do you rinse your substrate?
Yeah, I rinse it.
Yeah, no, you have to. You don't need to for oyster mushrooms, but yeah, but if you're growing interesting mushrooms, it's best to rinse off the lime as much as possible to return the pH to about 7. So,
See, what I did, I was growing the oysters, living in the rainforest up in Goonagary, above my house. I did a whole lot of ad. We were selling hats, and they gave us these great big bags with the hat, and we were using them as bin bags. And then I'm looking at them, I go, well, one day I looked at it and went, well, that's perfect for mushrooms. So I used sugar cane mulch, inoculated that, and then I had them hanging all through the rainforest bags with oyster mushrooms growing out in the open all through the
yeah,
They were amazing.
it's a perfect way to grow oysters.
It's great for the oysters.
Yeah. Hessian bags full of straw, just hanging up somewhere. It's just
It's amazing. But growing these, so heat's better in this way, otherwise I've got to bring that pH back up to it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I would just use hot water to pasteurize things usually. Once you feel comfortable using the lime method, it's lovely because it's super easy just to do a big bulk amount. Like most big pots are probably no more than 10 litres. Kitchen pots are 10 litres. You might get some bigger ones, but you can do kind of a fair amount of straw in there, but there's a lot of work involved in heating all that up, taking it out and squeezing the water out. Whereas, the lime method is nice. It's really, you leave it for 12 hours or 24 hours and then just drain it, and the lime just stops everything from growing on it. So it's good. If you're just starting out, I'd probably just use heat, just use hot water to pasteurize. But using the PF tack, using a little monotub like this and fruiting it within a fruiting chamber with perlite in the bottom is a perfect way to kind of start off your mycology career as a mushroom cultivator.
Am I right in assuming, just wanting your personal experience, that as long as we're all doing the legal thing, there's nothing wrong in buying spore prints overseas and posting them in, because there's nothing illegal in that. Am I right or am I wrong?
Australia does have some fairly strict biosecurity laws.
On spore prints?
Even on spore prints. Yeah, you're not really meant to bring. You can bring them in. You can have, but if you get someone to send you a spore print, and it's something legal, get them to label it, and then they will make the decision if they find the spore print. If they find it, read the Latin name. It's got to be the Latin name. If they read that and go, they will dispose of it and let you know. Psilocybin spores are listed federally as a biosecurity thing. So if they find psilocybe spores, you're in trouble. It's a customs. You're breaking a customs rule and also biosecurity law as well. So best not to bring them in. I know everybody does. Everybody will, order spores, but I guess on that, do not purchase spore syringes from overseas because they will get found and they will get destroyed. So you can try, but we do have very strict biosecurity rules for a reason. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. It's your decision what you choose to do. But we do have so many fantastic fungi here already. So, yeah, you know, like our Ganoderma here is they're beautiful species, and they have been shown to have benefits. So there is a packet going around of Cordyceps militaris mycelium. We're now allowed to grow Cordyceps militaris here in Australia. All of us cultivators are like busy trying to work out how the hell to do it. So it's a challenging mushroom, but we're getting there. Do I close it up? Yeah, I keep a lid on that to keep the humidity in there. Yep. You can make holes in it if you want. I find for some species like Ganoderma or some of the interesting things, you don't need to worry about the holes. If you're growing oyster mushrooms, you do need to drill holes into the side of the container all around to allow airflow, because oyster mushrooms need airflow. But for Ganoderma, shiitake, and a few other things, you don't need to worry so much about it, because they're already naturally growing in like near 99% humidity and very little airflow anyway. So.
With your holes, don't forget to tape them up.
Oh yeah, and good point. Yeah, tape them up with the micropore tape, because you will get fungus gnats. And fungus gnats love fungi. They will just fly straight through the holes and start to breed within your mushroom mycelium.
Is it not like breaking down the whole thing when you throw all your cakes into the perlite? Is it not breaking down the mycelium?
Sorry,
Like,
I'm competing with the. Do we have a roving mic that might?
Well, I can get it, but I've prepared them. If you just speak loudly, then we can hear better. It's probably easier.
is it not like completely destroying what you've done, like the cake and the mycelium, when you throw all the things in the box?
Oh, right. I get what you mean. Like when you're taking it out of the jar and you're breaking it up, you're not destroying the mycelium. No, you're not. No, mycelium has this beautiful behaviour of like wanting to rebind with itself, and you know, like with the cardboard method, you know, I'm breaking up the mushroom and putting it into the cardboard. That mycelium then is becoming an individual, and it's kind of like, oh, I need nutrients, and so it returns back to like a vegetative state, and will start to grow mycelium again. So you could potentially, you know, like when you're breaking it up, you can take little bits out and inoculate other media with that mycelium. It's still going to keep growing. It's just constantly looking for nutrients.
So if you got everything prepared, your boxes and stuff, can you just put it in your living room area because it's an enclosed?
Yeah, you can have it in your living room. That's.
So how does it work if any temperature changes? Like, is there a range of what is good and not good for the mycelium?
Usually between say 18 degrees through to. You don't want it getting past 35 degrees. Beyond 35 degrees, the mycelium starts to die.
And below 18 degrees, it's still growing?
It will just slow down. It won't kill it. Yeah. So, you know, like a lot of us, like in Victoria and Tasmania, we're getting those kind of like, you know, 12 degrees, even colder nights. It's still okay to grow. And some fungi even need a cold drop to be able to grow. So, you know, like we talk about subs, for example. Subs need that cold temperature for them to be able to grow. Oyster mushrooms need a cold drop usually to start that fruiting process.
Do you know like a mushroom, like psilocybin containing mushroom, that's going to handle more cold?
Subs.
The subs like the cold. Yeah, the subs like the cold. Cubensis like warmth
Yeah.
and moisture and humidity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you said before that you could grow here, that was allowed to grow here in place of.
Oh, I was talking about Cordyceps militaris, I think. Cordyceps militaris. It's we weren't allowed to grow it, and we're now allowed to grow it. So, yeah.
Is this a therapeutic?
It's a therapeutic mushroom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of those ones. Psychedelic, therapeutic.
No.
Subs are.
Subs are, but we're talking about cordyceps.
Oh, my apologies. I'm still stuck on sub.
So how cold can the subs go to a lake?
They are fine with freezing temperatures.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might, the temperature getting down to 0, it slows growth down a lot, but they're very tolerant of it. Yes. There was a question.
About the colonization, do you keep it in the dark?
Yeah, ideally you want to keep it in the dark. Light is a fruiting trigger. Light, changes in temperature, changes in humidity, changes in the level of carbon dioxide, all those things can be fruiting triggers. So when you're myceliating, it is a good practice to keep it in the dark. It's not essential, you don't have to. It's just that they may start to grow mushrooms inside the jar, that's all. Like where a little bit of light hits the jar. You might get like little pins of primordia forming, and you'll see them kind of growing, struggling to pop out, but they can't. So.
How do you see when it's contaminated? Is that very obvious to see?
Yeah, contamination is really obvious. Fortunately, like things like penicillium or trichoderma, their spore colour is quite obvious. Like it's a green colour, or you might penicillium is kind of more a blue colour. So
Can you still save pieces out of the family? Can you still save pieces out of the family when you've got contamination going on? Or everything is gone?
to get rid of it. If it's contaminated, get rid of it.
Good parts you can't take out.
Yeah, if you see that there's contamination in there, I would just remove that away from what your other jars. Take it outside and empty it in your compost.
But if you've got contamination in your box, not in your jar.
I wouldn't worry about that so much. Probably best really to remove the cake. The thing, once you're in here, and I guess that's another point too, is like once the cake is fully myceliated, you've got a window of time where you're not going to get any contamination because the mycelium is really healthy and it's actively fighting against contamination at that point. And that's why you can have like your cake sitting there like that in this container, because it's actively fighting against any potential contamination. But after probably two flushes, you'll probably start to see contamination growing on these anyway. Spores will land, they will germinate, and they will grow.
What do you mean with your flushes? Is it when
So, yes, good point. This is this thing about language, like we have this language around growing mushrooms that people get confused about. A flush is, it's a coordinated fruiting of the mushrooms. So the mycelium does things in waves. So it will recognize it's in a fruiting environment. It will start to form primordia as across the whole surface, and all the mushrooms will grow. And the usual habit is to then harvest every single one of those mushrooms. You'll wait till like the majority of them have matured. Then you just remove them all. And then you can let the cake sit for like another week. And then it'll do another wave of primordia. And you'll get like another flush of mushrooms.
So a flush is like a generational mushroom.
Yeah, okay, yep. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, the flush. Okay, but you have to collect all of them, you can't leave the little ones to
Usually it's best practice just to remove the mold. Like not every single baby mushroom is going to mature. At a certain point, the mycelium kind of calculates which mushrooms are going to be the best mushrooms and will then direct its energy into those, and you'll get what are called aborts, which are like little baby mushrooms that then will never develop. So, yeah.
Can you throw any offcuts into your new rice bag?
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't.
Big giant coming through.
Hooray! Line it up! Line it up! Line it up!
Don't forget 420.
So I'm happy to keep answering questions for a little while if people want, or if they want to head off and watch the combis, enjoy. Hang on. Look, I tend to just harvest in one go. It's what I find is the best. The mycelium is a living organism. It's kind of communicating within itself, and generally my overall observation is like once you start to pick off clusters, like the mycelium kind of just goes, oh well, that's it for this flush. Thank you. It's best just to harvest in one go. Look, if you just want to harvest one mushroom at a time and do that, you can.
4 weeks you start getting mushrooms, right?
Yep.
But how long can I wait? How far can I wait? After this 4 weeks. Whether from there you can go 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 6 weeks. I have harvest.
No, you'll need to speak up.
When do you harvest? At what time?
Oh, at what time? You harvest when the mushroom is ready. But that might be... So in this case, look, you're probably going to be harvesting within 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. It depends on the species of mushroom. So if it's an oyster mushroom, that's probably going to be fruiting within 4 weeks once it's fully myceliated and the cake is sitting there. The Ganoderma might take longer than that. The cordyceps, I'm finding, are ridiculously slow. I've had my culture sitting there in a fruiting environment now for like 2 months. I'm only just starting to get pins. So, different mushroom will fruit in different way. Cubensis, it's a pretty quick fruiting mushroom. So within about, 2 to 4 weeks of taking the cake out, you should be getting at least primordia, if not harvesting those mushrooms. In the perlite, you mean? You can use a plate if you want. I just use a little bit of foil. Yeah. No, that was what it was meant to. It was meant to come out as a whole little cake onto the foil.